today. After the guest speaker is done, we're going to do our walk around the park. We are not going to do the whole park because of construction. So those of us with high heels or somewhat of an uncomfortable feeling on our feet, we're going to shorten it a little bit. And then when we come back, I'll kind of give a closing remarks, and then we'll open up the microphone for anybody that would like to say something. So as we get started, this is our third annual Walk a Mile in Her Shoes event in Mason City, and we had one yesterday in Clear Lake. This is part of our coalition's mission to get public awareness out on these serious issues against women. But Josh Jaspers is our guest speaker. He's a public speaker, community leader. He's a sexual assault and domestic violence advocate. He comes from Riverview Center out of Dubuque, Iowa. And here's Josh.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for coming out for this amazing event. As was shared by the sheriff, my name is Josh Jasper. I'm with the Riverview Center, which is a nonprofit organization that provides services for people that have been affected by both sexual and domestic abuse out in the Dubuque area. I thought I'd share quickly, though, a story that happened to me last week when I was in my office in Dubuque. And while I was sitting in my office minding my own business, I heard a small knock at the door. I looked up, and there had to have been, the little boy at my door couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old. And he knocked on my door and he asked if he could come into my office and talk to me for a moment. And so I had him come in. He introduced himself. He shook my hand. He looked up and he said, I'd like to talk to you about the services that my mom has been receiving here at the Riverview Center. In short, this young man, who knew that we were preparing for our annual dinner here coming up in a month or two, shared with me that it was because of one of our male educators that was in his classroom that empowered him to be able to come forward and talk about how this young man, had been sexually abused in the past, and now this young boy is receiving the services that we provide. And so he stood up in my office and he handed me this white envelope, this small white envelope, and he said, for me and for my mom, who's now receiving counseling service as well, I want to thank you for Matt, our educator, and our counselors here in the office. And he handed me this envelope, and inside the envelope there was $25, and he had been saving his allowance for the last 3 months, and it's simply just to support our organization because, again, he's now getting help and his mom is receiving help. The reason I share that is because it's about a community. Today we're here because we need to act as a community to end sexual violence. This is why we're here. This sexual violence, for example, this is an epidemic. Many of you have these signs, these statistics on here. Someone's raped every 2 minutes in the United States. I can speak for statistics here in Mason City or in Dubuque, Iowa, and that 1 in 3 girls and 1 in 6 boys are sexually assaulted before they turn 18. This is a major public health issue. We need to start taking this more seriously as a community. Most of the reason in which we're here today in regards to this Walk a Mile in Her Shoes, quite frankly, is to empower more men to get involved in this work. Because this can no longer be just a woman's issue. The reality is, the sad, unfortunate reality, is that more than 90% of all the violence perpetrated in our society is done by men. More than 90% of violence is done by men. Now that's not to say that women aren't violent, because of course they are, and they can be. But the reality is, and I want to make an important distinction, I didn't say that 90% of men are violent. The reality is, the vast majority of men are not violent, but unfortunately are not getting involved with this type of work. And I salute, honestly, and I applaud each of you men and women that are here today to support Mary's organization and this prevention of sexual abuse. Because quite frankly, Mary, myself, other volunteers, advocates, and employees of respective centers throughout the state of Iowa, we can't do this alone. And much of our work honestly comes down to having to redefine masculinity, taking a look at how we're teaching our young boys to behave, our young men. And we quite frankly need men to be those role models. We need men to be able to say, hey, that's not funny. This isn't okay to act this way. I'm going to show you how to be a healthy man. I'm going to be that positive role model for you. And that's what you're doing today. You're doing that today for the young men in your community. That's all I've got.